Okay. There's always light at the end of the tunnel. Always. You know why? Because light is all there is. Barbara was just talking about that. Light is all there is. We are this light. We bring this light. We bring it to every second of our lives. We bring the light to the tunnel that we put ourselves in the first place. Because that's how this works, right? Whatever we're doing, however we're walking, we put ourselves there. It's not like some, like she was saying, some God in the sky or some circumstance from left field. It can feel that way. It can really feel like something came out of left field and just bam, knocked you and sent you on a loop. It can feel like there really is a dark night of the soul. I hear people talk about, we got to look at our dark sides. What dark side? There's only one, and it's light. The problem is that we forget. We forget. And then, for those who aren't in this room, they don't even know. Many of them don't even know that we are this light. Now, there was a time before this teaching, she was saying how she loves this teaching. I love this teaching. I love this teaching so much. It has absolutely saved my life. And I've spoken about this before, and I'm going to speak about it again today. So many years ago, many years ago, I wanted to be a rock and roll star. And I got really close a couple of times. And, to give you some idea, I was signed to Paul Simon's management company. I was signed to the Talking Heads management company. I opened for the Rolling Stones. I had a record deal with Warner Brothers. I had a single released in Canada that actually made it to the top 10. Another song of mine was recorded by another artist that made it up the charts in Canada. I mean, I got really close. But every time, in different bands, whatever band I had put together, they blew up. Something happened, something went wrong. And I didn't make it to that top rung that seemed so close and yet out of reach. And because I was not part of this teaching, I felt it was dark. I felt like there was no light at the end of the tunnel. That I had tried, and this was hopeless. It was never going to happen, and I quit. And from that point, the illusion of darkness actually got worse. I went on, and the illusion, because it really was an illusion. At that point, I was married. I had a son. I had a newborn baby. I was selling insurance. Turned out I was actually good at it and sold millions of dollars of it and had a house on a lake in upstate New York. But I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable and not able to take in not only the light that I was, but the beauty of my family life and what was going on around me. I wasn't getting in any of it. And I got so sick, I wound up in a hospital where, surrounded by doctors, they told me I had 5 days to live and I should get my affairs in order. We can do that to ourselves. We can actually get so dark and have that illusion so in front of us and so big for ourselves that we can lose sight of any light to the point at which you could be being told you're about to die. I go home after the doctors told me that, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go home. If I'm going to die, I'm going to do it in my own bed. And that was 25 years ago, so obviously I didn't die. But I did sell my business and left upstate, sold my house, grabbed my family, and we started moving south, and we wound up in Asheville, North Carolina, where I did not brighten because I still did not know about the light that was within me. I still did not know what was at all possible here for me in my life. I was miserable. So miserable, in fact, that my wife at the time said, "I've had enough. I'm leaving." And the one thing she left when she left was a card. And on that card, she said, "You really need to call this guy." And on the card, it said, Dr. John Waterhouse. So I called him, not thinking much of it. But, I was in a pretty dark place, or at least it had the illusion of such. So I called Dr. John. And we got together, and he started talking to me about this idea of oneness and this idea of light and these science of mind ideas. And at first I was very, I was like, that don't mean nothing to me. But he was a very persistent man. And he kept inviting me to this place he called a church or center out in a cornfield. And I kept telling him, "I'm Jewish, I don't go to church." But he was helping, and he kept showing up and talking to me, and until finally I said, all right, I'll come check it out. So I go out to this cornfield, this little trailer made into a center/church out in a cornfield, and I hear Barbara Waterhouse speak for the first time. Do you remember the first time you heard Dr. Barbara Waterhouse speak? What it did to you? I was sitting there going, oh my God, she is speaking to my heart. She is speaking to my heart. Which is why, if anybody was here the last time I did a talk, I said that I think they named this teaching wrong. I think it ought to be called science of heart, not science of mind. Because even though and I know why they decided on science of mind, because we really do need to shift our thinking. Our thinking does impact our feeling, and our feelings do impact how we see the world. And so it's important that we do shift our thinking, but in the end, to really get this teaching, you've got to take it into your heart. And I started to do that. I started taking classes. I started volunteering. Now, when I quit the music business, and I promised myself I was never going to get involved with that again. I was not playing any more music. I was not writing any more songs. I was done. It was hopeless. And here it is, 10 years later, 12 years later, and I'm helping out in sound and, volunteering around. And then one day John comes to me and says, I know you were in music. How about you playing a song for the congregation? I'm like, I don't know. I'm really opening up old wounds, opening up old wounds. Have you ever been faced with the prospect of dealing with opening up old wounds? Have you, anybody here, raise your hand, if you thought you could get around those wounds and still grow? Yeah, wasn't that a joke on you? It certainly was on me. So, John, being the persuasive man he is, finally convinced me to get up and play out in the cornfield, and I played once, and then they wanted me to come play again, and then they wanted me to come play again. So I kept doing that. I kept going out there and playing, and then the idea about building a building here showed up, and they asked me to help with designing and putting in the sound system, and I did that. And then it wasn't long after we were here that the music director quit. And so I'm sitting down with John and Barbara, and the three of us realized it was mine to do. And isn't that how it happens, right? You're going along thinking things are so dark, thinking things are so bad. But if you're in this teaching and you're treating and you're remembering and you're at least trying to remember curves, right? I remember back in the days when I was first getting into this teaching that it wasn't so easy to remember. I mean, now I had these thoughts and I could work with them a little bit. And like many of you probably, when you first get in this teaching, a lot of things change fast and you're like, wow, this stuff's really good. But then something hits that's not so easy. And you're like, oh, this is not so easy. This is hard. Am I the only one that happened to in just getting through this teaching? So there I am. I'm just getting it, and so now I'm the music director. I'm like, how did this happen? Getting back to the music, and so I actually start hearing these songs. So I'm like, oh God, I'm going to start writing songs again. And so I start writing songs, and we start performing them here, and musicians start showing up, and we have this band that turns out to be so incredible. I have had the honor of being backed up by many of the players in Billy Joel's band, in one of the bands I put together back in the day. These guys were better. The band we had here was extraordinary. These musicians, the way they were playing, what they could do, there was no song we could not accomplish. We were playing Pink Floyd, Allman Brothers. I mean, we were playing all kinds of really fun stuff. And the band was, and my songs that I was writing back then. And then one day, a bunch of congregants, after service, come to the front of the room and said, we did a collection. Here's a wad of cash. Go record these songs. Go record these songs. I was done with all this. So I find myself recording these songs. My first New Thought CD called Walk Across Fire. And it wasn't long after the CD got finished where Barbara and John hosted a ministerial conference. And so the room is now filled with ministers, and our band is playing these songs off this Walk Across Fire CD, and now I am inundated with calls to please come play at my church. Please come play at my center. I'm like, oh my God, I got away from all this. I thought I was done with all this. The light that was coming through me was showing up in front of me and having it be mine to do. Have you noticed that the longer you're in this teaching, the brighter you become in yourself, the brighter the light is that comes around you, and those things that you thought you could never do anymore, all of a sudden start becoming, in form right in front of you because it was in your heart as a dream. Those deeper dreams that we carry, that we have, that we hold. Have you noticed? The longer you are in this teaching, the more you are willing to practice this teaching, the more it comes forth. Those things that are the deepest in your heart that maybe you hid away. I mean, that's one of the beautiful and most magnificent things about this teaching is maybe you locked away a dream. Maybe you locked away something that you said, no, I can't do that anymore. It hurts too much. And lo and behold, it starts showing up. Am I the only one? So there we are, dealing with those things. And what I noticed even on more than that is that the wounds of the past actually felt like they were healing. That I could feel my whole beingness start to come into an alignment that I wasn't even focused on. And yet what I was focused on was being in alignment. But then all of a sudden around these dreams, these deeper dreams, things started to arise that I would have never even imagined. So now I'm getting all these calls, and I'm starting to travel around and visit some of these centers and playing my music in those centers. I'm selling tons of CDs. And then before I know it, back here, one of the congregants at the time turned out to own a record label and asked me if I would come in and record for his label. And that was my second CD called Dreamers and Children. And that came out, and all of a sudden now I'm getting more calls than ever. And Barbara and I, we had an agreement that I would be the music director for 5 years and then see what would happen from there. It had now been 5 years. I'd been the music director for 5 years. And it was time for me to move on, clearly. And I started traveling the country. I played in over 75 different centers, and Unity churches got a hold of my music. Some of my songs are now in Unity songbooks. I started receiving royalty checks. And before I knew it, I was invited to play at the New Thought Music Awards. It's called the Posse Awards. And I was invited there to open the ceremonies with one of my songs. House is packed. Everybody's jumping out of their seats and singing along with me like they know my song. And I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, this is incredible. I didn't even want this. I wasn't even going for this. And here I am. And yet, I obviously did want it because I found myself crying. I found my heart busting open. Those places in my heart I had closed years earlier. And I could look back on my days in the music business and see my accountability on all the things that I was blaming everybody else for in the world. They were the reason I didn't make it back then. And in owning it, I could feel the healing of it. I could feel myself just heal from this. And that's when it dawned on me that it was time for me to move on into ministry. And that began my journey there. But it started with meeting Dr. John Waterhouse and Dr. Barbara Waterhouse. It started with taking classes here. One of the most fascinating things that I've run across as a minister in this movement is the calls I get from people who say, I have studied the science of mind for 25 years and nothing has changed. Why is that? And I say, well, I get that you've studied, but have you practiced? Have you taken it into those moments where you needed it most? Were you willing to shift your thinking at the moment when things were felt the darkest? Bring your light in there. Remember the truth then, when it's the hardest to do so. Because that's what it takes, right? It's easy. This teaching is easy when things are smooth sailing. Have you noticed that? How easy this teaching is when everything's smooth sailing? The key is, can you bring it down into those spots that are not smooth sailing, where all of a sudden it feels like a dark night of the soul? It feels like there's actually darkness going on, a diagnosis, a broken relationship, loss of job or finances. Some of these are incredibly dark places. And those are the moments where this teaching is the most powerful, when we can bring it in there. We can say, okay, time to treat. Okay, time to call a practitioner. Okay, I can remember the truth now. And I loved what John said last week about using a practitioner. And I want to tell you a story that Barbara Waterhouse once shared with the congregation, so you may know this story. It's about a woman who came into her office and said, I have a medical thing I need done, but I don't have any money for it. Can you treat for me and help me, support me in the money showing up for this medical thing I need done? And so Barbara treated, the money showed up, and the woman had the medical thing done. Month later, same woman shows up and goes, my car broke down. I need money. Can you treat for money so that I can, get my car fixed? Barbara treated for money. The money showed up. Woman got her car fixed. Month later, woman shows up again and says, I don't have the money for my rent. Can you treat for me so that the money will show up to pay my rent? And Barbara goes, wait a minute. You have to do the work too. I can only hold you up for so long. You have got to do the work too. And so, yes, I am all for calling a practitioner. But the one thing they do besides treating is tell you what you can do to support yourself in this, and then it's up to you to do it. They're talking about the basic ideas of Science of Mind class. And let me tell everyone in this room why all of you should be there Monday night. I don't mean to shit on you, so you don't have to show up if you don't want to. But let me tell you what you can gain from it besides the great knowledge that Dr. John has to share. I have noticed whenever I'm in class or whenever I'm talking to somebody who's in class, they get deeper into their practice because they're surrounded by people who are practicing. And doing that kind of practice together really does build energy. Community is important. Showing up for these classes is important because it really does help when we come together and remind ourselves that the basic idea of Science of Mind is to treat, is to know the truth. To know the truth in the moment you need it. Because the more we practice that knowing of truth in the moment we need it, the better we embody it. We embody that truth. I've heard that there are some people who think that they can bypass the first two steps of treatment and just get to the third one because they know that they're one. Well, if they knew that they're one, they wouldn't need the third step of treatment. The whole reason we have a third step of treatment is for those who actually didn't get the first two steps. That's what's possible here. When we know that we are light, what's to want? When we know that we are God in power, what's to want? We have it. It shows up. I have changed my treatment a lot through the years. I'm now up to simply divine light. I think I mentioned that last time. Because as if I'm in that space of divine light, my life works incredibly. I love the idea that time in and time out, each week, I'm up to now at least once or a couple of times a week, something is showing up in my life that not only didn't I expect, but I'm blown away by. It's really amazing what's possible once we get into that level of practice. You can be at a level of practice where your life is astounding. The level of gratitude and appreciation you're feeling for what's going on around you is unbelievably large. That's what's possible here for each and every one of us. To sit in that place, that magnificent place of light, of love, of beauty, gratitude, inspiration, joy. I love that those words are in the back of the room and I get to just read them, That's what's possible here. We have that. We have that place in each of us where we get to feel that no matter the circumstance. It doesn't matter what's going on. It doesn't matter how dark it may feel. Because sometimes life can feel dark, but don't believe your feelings around it. Don't believe it. There's only one truth. One, that there is light. that we are light, that everything is light, love, and beauty. All of us, right here now. Thank you. I love you.